On healthcare, Governor, you spoke recently to the Democratic Convention. A lot of passion, a lot of pride in your voice about what's been accomplished. Yet Tim and Charlie have offered their own critique and criticism of the law. I try to step back from it and take what I hope is a neutral or at least a fair assessment. Mm-hmm. We've got about 98% of the residents of Massachusetts covered, making us #1 in the nation.
That's right.
That should be a point of pride.
That's a great thing.
But I also see this. I see hospitals suing the state because promises that were made to them were broken, BMC in Cambridge specifically. You've put
Allegedly.
You've put in place a freeze, which both Tim Cahill and Charlie Baker have described as a gimmick. The papers, Herald and Globe, last week released a series of internal emails that suggest there's a train wreck that's occurring because of what some people are describing as a campaign gimmick. You're getting about $2 billion a year more from the federal government than you were 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And emergency room utilization has not gone down, as was one of the premises of healthcare. How do you describe it in such glowing terms when you have all this wreckage around the law?
Well, charges are not wreckage. Charges are opinions. And first of all, you're right. 97.5% of our residents have health insurance today. No other state in America can touch that, and that is something we all ought to be proud of. That's a reform crafted by a Republican governor, a Democratic United States senator, a Democratic legislature, and a broad coalition of people in the healthcare industry, business, and advocates, and so on. And that coalition has, on the whole, stayed together to adjust as we've gone along. So really, really great news. The next step, and the step that was, and the order of the next step, as agreed on by those framers, is to deal with costs. And the recommendations from the commission to deal with those costs is around payment reform, which is to move from sort of paying for the amount of health care to paying instead for the quality or the outcomes of those of that care. And when those recommendations were delivered after a couple years of study, we got them in the fall. The very first thing that the industry said was, please go slow. Take 5 years, because this is a big change and we don't want to disrupt the industry too much. Well, meanwhile, small businesses in particular, which represent 85%, this is something on which, a sensitivity on which I think Tim and I really agree, 85% of the businesses in this Commonwealth are small, 50 people or fewer. And for them, this is an economic emergency. They can't wait 5 years. And so what I said in February is, look, unless there's a better idea, we're going to use this residual regulatory authority as a bridge from here to there, and cap, not a hard cap, but a soft cap on rates, unless people could justify why unreasonable increases should be permitted.
But the internal emails suggest that 3 insurers are already in financial trouble,
which has absolutely nothing to do.
And more are going to follow. You've got to set up a domino here.
First of all, that email is from somebody who has absolutely nothing to do with the development or the execution of this policy, and the issues around the solvency of insurers predates this policy. That's the other thing I want to be clear. Let me also be. You made a mention about promises kept to the hospitals.
Yes.
First of all, the legislature is legislation. Health reform legislation is very clear that after 3 years, these special payments would end. They ended. And what we're having to do now, to the point, frankly, similar to what both Charlie and Tim have said in the context of state government, some of these providers, some of these hospitals are also having to think in new ways about their operating model, and we're trying to work with them to do that.
Let's do Tim and Charlie on comment on healthcare.
Let me just say, this is WRKO. We're having our first of the season gubernatorial debate. Governor Patrick is here, Treasurer Cahill, and Charlie Baker, the Republican candidate. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, this is Tim Cahill talking. A couple points I want to make out with the governor. I want to leave time for everyone on this one because it's a big issue. But 2 things. The governor mentioned all the people were at the table when this law was passed. Small business was not at the table. Now it's being brought into the table, and that's part of the problem. Small businesses had not had a seat at this table, and they are being squeezed more than anyone, both at the federal level and at the state level. There's a tax credit in the federal legislation that allows people to write off coverage of small businesses unless they're family businesses, meaning you can't get that tax credit if you have family members in that business. The other thing the governor said that I disagree with fundamentally is that we had a reform. First of all, we started with the highest percentage. We started at 92% or 93. Now we're at 97. So it's not like we came from 85, which some of these other states are coming. But the other thing I take disagreement, the governor wasn't here at the time, so with all due respect to him, it was Charlie, the Republicans, Mitt Romney, and the Democratic legislature that put this together. But cost was not the driving force. Well, now we're going to deal with cost. We should always be dealing with cost first when we do any kind of reform, because if we don't get the costs right, as we've seen with the big dig, as we've seen with health care, then we can't fix anything. We're going to have less access to health care if we have less insurance companies and we have less hospitals.
Dealing with cost, Tim, do you think your doctor or Mass General overcharges when you go in for a procedure?
I think Mass General in general overcharges. They get reimbursed higher based on what the insurance companies give them. They get more money than if I go to Quincy Hospital. And there's no incentive for anyone if everyone basically has a Cadillac plan, or most people have the Cadillac plan, where they can go to Mass General to get routine treatment that will cost more. It will cost more, and then the smaller community hospitals are getting 70 cents or less on the dollar because they're taking mostly Medicaid
if that's consumer
patients.
choice, as governor, are you going to direct those consumers to say you must go to the low-cost place?
I'm not going to direct them. We're going to incentivize them because that's the key. You got to get them to keep more of their money. You got to give them more choices and say if you choose that, you can pay less. We've got to give people more choices on catastrophic health insurance. Right now, you have to buy a full coverage plan to qualify under the connector model.
Let's toss this to Charlie for comments.
I think the key here is we need to give individuals, consumers, more choices, not the government all the choices. That's the big difference in my plan.